Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you guys today. And today's topic is Uranus in Taurus. I've been meaning to get around to doing this video for you guys, and here I am doing it today. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you to all of you who have been tuning in, and thank you for sharing your experiences and questions and comments, and thanks to all new subscribers and all the rest of the people that have been with me for some time. Okay, so today is the 13th of March, so Uranus entered Taurus on the 7th of March, so we've had a few days of it now, early days. And the last few days, you know, as I did an update for March, so please watch that if you haven't, because that covers a general overview of the energies for this month. And this Mercury retrograde in Pisces has been a very interesting experience thus far, not only for myself, but many people have been sharing lots of their experiences with me. It's a very, very tricky Mercury. There seems to be a lot of, how can I put it? What I would call information being put out that's actually not necessarily accurate. You know, there's the old Mercury in Pisces retrograde creating quite a few what I would call illusions in terms of what's been vocalized and projected. And that's been happening on social platforms, social media. It's just very interesting to observe. It's been directed at certain famous people as well. It's pretty chaotic at the moment. So what I would suggest is just be very careful with what you read and, you know, what you actually believe as actual truth. You know, this Mercury in Pisces retrograde will conjunct Neptune again, so there's a lot of possible deception that can go on with what's been projected. So just be very aware of that. Just wanted to throw that in before I start. Okay, so look, Uranus in Taurus is a big deal. It's a big deal for a number of different reasons. But before I start talking about some of the general, I suppose, characteristics of what it could possibly mean from a collective perspective and also from a personal perspective, I just want to take you through some major things to consider and to understand when you're actually working with the energy of Uranus, when you're wanting to understand it in your own birth chart, or if you're looking at other people's birth charts. For me personally, I find Uranus transits to be life-changing, extremely powerful, and for me, I respond to Uranus transits in pretty powerful ways. And, you know, that has probably a lot to do with the fact that Uranus, for me, natally, is a very, very prominent planet. It's in my 9th house, but it's conjunct my MC. So it describes me on my professional path, on my life path, on my calling, what I'm here to do, which is why I'm doing all the astrology, really. But Uranus also, and I am an Aquarius moon and Aquarius ascendant, so I'm a double Aquarian with a very strong Uranus. Uranus also forms a trine to my ascendant, a trine to my moon, and a trine to my north node. My north node is in Aquarius. So I've got a lot of Aquarius Uranus energy within me, within the expressions, the various expressions of my being. So I really relate and resonate to this energy very, very strongly. And I was just looking back at some aspects of my own life before I sat down to do this video, and I was reminded that and this is to help you understand when you want to work with Uranus in terms of where it is right now for you, it's very worthwhile paying attention to and looking back depending on how old you are, obviously will determine how far back you go. Just to follow the track of Uranus from wherever it is when you were born natally, and just have a look at where it's been transiting in your chart, and whether it's actually formed any aspects to personal planets, particularly in your chart while it's been transiting from the time of your birth up until now. Okay, Uranus has an 84-year cycle. It spends approximately 7 years in each zodiacal sign. So when it moves into a particular house in your birth chart, particular area of your chart, it's going to stay there for 7 years. So it's going to create a lot of disruptions and a lot of changes, and a lot of unpredictable experiences for 7 years. Now, clearly you're not going to experience the intensity and the volume of it for 7 years every single day. But the thing to really pay attention to is when Uranus crosses over into a particular house. So say, for example, you have it in the 10th house, and 7 years later it crosses over into the 11th house, and then it crosses over into the 12th, and then the 1st, etc., etc. When it makes those crossover points at exactly that time, that is the time when you'll really notice the energy of Uranus. Before I unpack that, just going back to what I was saying before, I noticed that my first experience of the disruptive energy of Uranus was when I was about 7, 8 years old. And that was Uranus forming a square to my moon. And without going into too much information about that, the moon represents my mother, and my mother at that time left the family. She left 3 children and my dad. She left us all. So that was my experience, my first experience of Uranus squaring my moon. That was the first major aspect that I experienced as a kid. Now, that was incredibly disruptive, as you can imagine. As a kid, having one of your primary caregivers basically just take off is a pretty big experience for everyone in the family, obviously. But I just wanted to bring that up because it is very interesting when you go back and you look at what Uranus has been doing in your chart from the time of your birth, because Uranus is known to be the higher octave of Mercury. And the fact that it's the higher octave of Mercury correlates to Mercury rules the mind, right? The left brain. So Uranus rules the right brain. That's why it's known as the higher octave of Mercury. So when you understand it from that level, the things that correlate to Uranus being the higher octave of Mercury is that because it connects to the right brain, connects to intuition, connects to long-term memory. So your day-to-day thinking and processing thoughts, and remembering what time you woke up this morning and what you did yesterday is a Mercury memory and encounter. But when you are talking about subconscious memories, either pertaining to this current life or previous lifetimes, that all correlates to the planet Uranus. So within our being, we have this long-term memory that is contained within us that Uranus has the key to, that holds all the information from every single life you have lived, and that is retained in your subconscious memory. Those memories, very much including the memories of this lifetime that may be in your subconscious memory, because I think it's fair to say that most of us struggle to remember what was going on when we were 1 or 2 years old, right? Some people have brilliant memories, like my 2 brothers, for example. They can remember things from the age of 2 and 3 years old quite vividly. So some people have exceptional vivid memories in that way. But regardless of that, when we are talking about subconscious memories that pertain to either this lifetime or previous lifetimes, it is Uranus that holds the key to opening those up. So they are stored within us, and those memories speak to or define or determine much of our behavior and much of our beliefs and our values and our perceptions and how we structure our life. So from an external level, this defining of our world, of our social conscious, of what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about life, the culture we were born into, religious beliefs we were born into, the socioeconomic structures we are born into, all these pertain to Saturn. So and just one other point, the fact of the matter is that the majority of the people on the planet, their world stops at Saturn. Saturn rules boundaries, okay? So those boundaries and structures that inform who we think we are, what we believe, and how we live our life is defined by Saturn. And the majority of people, as I said, their life stops at Saturn. They don't believe anything beyond Saturn, meaning that they are so conditioned to believe the apparent structures they see before them that have been imprinted and integrated due to the society, family, culture, and religion they were born into. So everyone is born into some kind of culture, religious connotation, socioeconomic structure, etc. And some people, because of the power of Uranus and the other two outer planets, Neptune and Pluto, will begin to ask questions, to investigate, to explore, to want to understand, well, why do I believe this? Why do I have to believe such and such? Is there anything more to this life than what I see before me? So the people that probe and that ask questions and that want answers are usually the people that are more inclined to be receptive to the three transpersonal planets, which are Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So if your life stops at Saturn, then when you have a Uranus transit, this is the point I'm trying to make, when you have a Uranus transit, it is likely to be a nightmare. It is likely to cause incredible upheaval and disruption and chaos, because you simply wouldn't be ready for it. The natural sort of response to a Uranus transit when you're living at the Saturn level is resistance, pure and simple. So the minute you resist a particular energy that's trying to inform you, it's trying to free you in the case of Uranus, then the resistance is going to be experienced as tension and conflict, disruption, chaos, unwanted changes, all those sorts of things. So we have to sort of start to, when you're looking at transiting Uranus at the moment in Taurus in your own chart, understand these basic fundamental perspectives of the archetype of Uranus and what it brings up. Now, it would be fair to say that the majority of people that would be even watching this video wouldn't really be living at the Saturn level, because if they were, you wouldn't be interested in what I have to say. You most likely wouldn't be interested or receptive to understanding the wisdom of astrology. So the fact that you are here listening means that you, in some way, in your life, in your being, you have opened yourself up to being receptive to these transpersonal energies, which will enable you to evolve, transform, liberate, and spiritualize yourself. Because when we are talking about Uranus, we are talking about liberation, freedom, and deconditioning. It's the entire deconditioning of what Saturn has imprinted in your psyche from when you were born, not only from when you were born, but from what you carry through in your long-term memory, right brain, Uranus, from previous lifetimes. So in short, that's what Uranus is really trying to do. It's trying to wake you up, revolutionize your life, open your intuition, decondition you, and liberate you. And when it comes to Neptune and Pluto, well, let's start with Pluto. Pluto will evolve your soul. That's what it's doing all the time. Pluto is the soul. So the whole death, rebirth experiences are a necessary component of this life. And again, the majority of us resist, the process and experience of death. For instance, when we lose a loved one, that is probably one of the most painful experiences, in my opinion, to undergo in this human form. And regardless of how spiritual you are and how aware you are and how conscious you are and how in tune you are with the fact that you're not just this physical being and that you are eternal, the experience of death is an incredibly painful one, but it is a necessary one that we all undergo and encounter in so many different ways. We have these mini little deaths and rebirths throughout our life. When you leave a job, it's a death. When you end a relationship, it's a death. When you relocate somewhere, it's a death and a new beginning. So this experience of dying and letting go and being reborn streams through our entire life. It doesn't stop. But because of the world of Saturn, the conditions of Saturn that are imprinted in our psyche and in our experience through life, we hang on. We hang on to everything because the unknown is always very, very threatening to the ego. And Uranus rules the territory of the unknown. Uranus is freedom from that known. And that's a term that Jeffrey Wolf Green, I believe, has coined. I don't know what happened there. I believe we are still recording. There was a moment of, hey, Mercury's in retrograde. What can I say? Things are going all over the shop. It's in Pisces. Okay. So hopefully you are starting to get the gist of when you are looking at Uranus, you must take all these pointers into consideration to understand its archetype and how it's working. So wherever Uranus is transiting, it is simply and purely trying to decondition you and the collective from the known, meaning that the known is defined by what we know, what we are used to, what we are comfortable with. Just because something is comfortable, it doesn't mean that it's healthy or that it's contributing to your evolution and your growth and your development. In fact, to the contrary, often it's not. Often it's actually what keeps people stagnant and stuck and attached, right? So imagine, Uranus moving into Taurus. Imagine the issues we're going to be dealing with there. But I'll go into that in a moment. So pay attention to Uranus if it's crossing over a house cusp, so entering a new house in your birth chart. That's going to be huge. For the first year, while Uranus is just transiting that house cusp, that area of your life is going to be experienced through the Uranian archetype. The natural impulse is to resist it. For the majority of people, about 70% or 75% of people will resist the impulse of what Uranus is trying to bring through. And the rest of the people that don't resist it are able to really work with this energy, which means what? It means that they can liberate themselves from the known. They can further develop in their path of individuation. Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about Uranus being connected to our path of individuation, which is what? It's basically the development, you could say, of our evolution. Really, it's breaking through all the conditions and conditioning that has been imprinted on us in some way or another. And the individuation process is this constant waking up to the fact that the world is not just what we see in this 3D dimension. In this, it's not three-dimensional. The world is not as it appears. But in order to access that kind of understanding, that kind of intuition, the possibility that there is more, we need to be receptive to the Uranian, Neptunian, Plutonian energy. And as I said, most people are not. The other things that I wanted to touch on, so when we're talking about conditioning, the patterns that we've been conditioned into in our life, naturally that's going to be formed from the family we're born into, as I said, the society we're born into, culture and religion. I'm sure you've met people who, when you speak to them, they hold very strong positions to some kind of belief system they have pertaining to the Saturnian world, I mean. And it's almost impossible sometimes to break through and to encourage, let's say, somebody to see things from a transpersonal perspective, from a transcendent perspective, from an intuitive perspective, from a third eye perspective. I think having access and understanding to the higher mind and to the fact that there is much more than this three-dimensional space we all share, it really it's not something that somebody can necessarily convince you of. It's such a personal journey. We must go through this process and journey ourselves, and we discover new things along the way for eternity. It doesn't end. If you look back at your own life and you look at when Uranus started transiting from the time of your birth, you would be able to identify very key cycles in your life and key points and key transitions. And when you're young, the Uranian energy is often projected into the family, the family environment, the family context, because when you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, it's very, very difficult to own that energy. So the most natural thing is to have it projected around you. For instance, like I said earlier, when I was 7 or 8 and I had transiting Uranus square my moon, that was my mother leaving. That was my transit. That was my chart being triggered, right? But look at the way it manifested. And, that could happen at a later stage in life as well. It just so happened to take place for me in my life when I was very, very young. So whenever Uranus transits a house in your chart, forms an aspect to one of your personal planets in particular, it is always an opportunity to decondition yourself. Deconditioning yourself can be the most liberating and most freeing experience. It can also be the most daunting and most frightening experience for people, because the nature of humans, as I said before, is to attach themselves and to stay with what's familiar, regardless of whether it's contributing to their development or not, to their consciousness, to their evolution. Most people will just stay with what's comfortable. And when we are talking about the sign of Taurus, which is where Uranus has moved into now, the last time Uranus was in Taurus was in 1934. And it was there until 1942. Is that right? About 41, 42. Now, I wasn't born then. I wasn't around then. And I'm sure many of you wouldn't have been either. So, but it is interesting to look back because, see, Uranus has an 84-year cycle. So therefore, the last time Uranus was in Taurus was in the 1930s. Now, if you go back into history, and it's worth understanding this because this is the way you learn astrology. This is the way you learn the symbolism of astrology. This is the way you see how astrology itself, in terms of the archetypes and the planets and the stars and everything, is evolving just like we are. The state of the world in 1930 is not the state of the world today, right? So, but when we look at the 1930s and 40s, there was a lot of really dark things going on. It was the period of depression. There was World War II. There was a lot of things going on that were pretty heavy going conditions for the world. I mean, war, what could be worse than that, really? So, I mean, if we are to just, if we are just to take those points into consideration, we would be left feeling quite frightened, I think, in terms of what are we to expect with Uranus in Taurus at this point in history. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot more. It's a bit of both, really. I was going to say that there's a lot more consciousness and awareness in the collective, in human beings. But on the other hand, there's a lot more danger as well because of the advancement of technology. And this advancement of technology is really a blessing and a curse wrapped up in one. And very simply put, what I mean by that is that technology has advanced so many different components in life, in the medical field, in communication world. Nowadays you can speak to anybody around the world for free, through your phone, computer, whatever the case, and instantly. Back in the 1930s, there was no such thing, right? I mean, there was no such thing even 40, 50 years ago. So whilst the world of technology has advanced in so many ways, that has produced a lot of revolutionary experiences and a lot of in terms of the medical field, you could say there's been a lot of advancement where, you know, medicines, surgeries, you know, all that sort of stuff has advanced in a incredibly rapid way. And this is, you know, this is Uranus energy. When it comes to the world of communication, like I said, you know, we have instant access to anything. You know, type of a keyword into Google and you can get 100,000 pages on a particular subject, for instance. So whilst we have all this incredible quick access to anything we want, the downside to that is that a lot of it isn't actually true. So there's a lot of information out there that's just put out there. It's just that it's the Gemini world. It's information for the sake of information. Doesn't mean it's truth or reliable. So this is where we have to use our discretion, and we have to discern, and we have to research, and we have to study. You know, we can't just accept what somebody is saying just because they're saying it. We have to probe and investigate ourselves. So that's one dimension. And then from a technological advancement level, going back to, if we take it back to the 1930s where we had World War II, well, if there was a war now, you know, it's so easy for these countries to just push one little button and, you know, it would just be, it'd be death and chaos. So we're really at quite a volatile stage in consciousness collectively, because with the level of advancement that's gone on, if that is in the wrong hands, the damage that can be created now is far worse than what was happening in the 1930s. So that's one side of it. The other thing about, actually, before I expand on Uranus in Taurus, I just want to share just a few more points on just transiting Uranus, right? So if you have transiting Uranus aspecting your Sun, your Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus. I'll just use an example with Uranus and Mars, okay? This is just an example because you may very well be experiencing transiting Uranus square your Mars or conjunct your Mars or opposite your Mars. This example is relating to a square. And I just want to demonstrate to you the core difference between the archetypes of Saturn and Uranus. When you are faced with a situation in life where you are completely restricted and limited with your own sense of sovereignty or freedom, that's Saturn's energy, pure and simple. When you are experiencing a sense of liberation and freedom to be who you are, a free sovereign being, eternal being, that's the experience of Uranus. So, you know, they are complete opposite energies, but their cycles work together. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a minute. But let's just say that in your natal chart you had Mars square Saturn as a natal configuration in your birth chart. And what is Mars? Mars is your desires. It's your desire to express, to go for your goals, to assert yourself, to put yourself out there, to go with that instinct and that drive of what you want to create and achieve, you know, all those things and much, much more. But when you have a Mars square Saturn, the Mars gets suffocated by Saturn, you could say. The Saturn tries to overtake the Mars and determine how Mars is going to behave. That's always going to be the case when you've got a Saturn-Mars aspect. So Saturn rules anything that's suppressed and oppressed. It also rules what's depressed. So when you have a Sun square Mars, the Mars energy is suppressed and oppressed to a very large degree. Along comes transiting Uranus on your Mars, and boom, all of a sudden you have this incredible access and activation of your Mars energy through the assistance of Uranus, which, when not handled well, if that comes along in an individual's life who's got, suppressed anger and suppressed, frustration and anger at the world, or whatever the case, then that transiting Uranus coming onto the Mars, that can be explosive in a dangerous way. But that's an extreme example. On the other hand, it can also be an experience where the individual finally finds the will, the ability to access that Mars energy, their desires and their drives to feel free, right? To allow that Mars to feel a sense of liberation and freedom. So it's only because transiting Uranus has come around and touched that Mars, and it's just unlocked that energy that has essentially inherently lies suppressed or oppressed because of the influence of Saturn. So these are the sorts of things you need to think about, when transiting Uranus is transiting your birth chart. What is it hitting off? What house is it about to cross over into? Whatever Uranus is influencing through an aspect, it's crossing over a house or it's aspecting a personal planet, that planet and that house is going to undergo the Uranian experience. And there's either going to be a resistance to the impulse of what Uranus is trying to bring through, and therefore it's going to be quite chaotic, or it's going to be an incredible sense of liberation and freedom. Now, don't get me wrong, when Uranus comes along and forms this aspect or crosses over into a particular house, the experience of liberation and freedom, it doesn't necessarily come wrapped up in, a box of flowers. Something has to be released. Something has to, you have to let go of something. It doesn't just come like that. So either way, the Uranus impulse, the archetypal energy as it comes through into whatever area of your life it's coming into, it's going to cause some disruption, to say the least. But if you are able to understand what's happening and what's been building prior to it reaching to this point, what's going on in your life, who are you, what age are you at, what experiences have you had prior to this, all these components are going to define what this Uranus in Taurus means for you. So we must always look at the entire picture of an individual, right? Because Uranus in Taurus for you is not going to be the same as it is for me necessarily. So even though this is a transpersonal planet and it really contains or connects to the collective energy, it also connects to our own individual path of individuation. Are you ready to wake up? Do you want to wake up? Are you ready to be liberated? Are you ready to feel free, and break free from the chains of the conditions that have been imprinted in you? This is what Uranus can do. Okay, let me just double check something here. So just another point which kind of relates to something I said before, but just to expand on it. As I said, Uranus correlates to the right brain, therefore long-term memory. So when you have a Uranus transit that triggers something, kicks something off, some of the things that can happen are this. It can release and free what is suppressed. It can wake up memories from past lives, and it can also tune you in to future lives. So Uranus is quite extraordinary on that level because it connects to what's already been and what's to come. There's no other planet that really does that. So when you have a Uranus transit, this is one of the possibilities. Uranus is also connected to having breakthroughs, right? It's, you know, it could be a breakthrough in something you've been working on for a very long time, personally or professionally. It can be a sudden sense of awakening to information that you normally wouldn't have access to. It's really an incredibly powerful transit. What Uranus does when it triggers past life memories, for instance, that's not necessarily always an easy experience because there can be trauma there. So you could access or trigger or open up some memory to some experience of trauma that is in your subconscious memory, and then the Uranus transit brings it up to the conscious awareness. And if you're not ready for that, that can be at, you know, just to use an extreme example, that can be having a mental breakdown for somebody. It's a very, very electrifying energy. It's not very easy to handle. Okay. So Uranus will be in Taurus for 7 years, as most of you would be aware. 7, 8 years. And it's at 0 degrees of Taurus. So those of you who have 0 degrees of Scorpio planets will have Uranus opposite those planets. Those of you who have 0 degrees of Leo or Aquarius, Uranus will be squaring those planets. And naturally, as Uranus progresses into the sign of Taurus, so eventually it'll get to 1 and then to 2 and then to 3 and so on degrees. So you might have your sun at 10 degrees of Scorpio, which means in a few years' time, a couple of years' time, transiting Uranus will be opposite your sun. It's very, very important to pay attention to these transits, especially when Uranus is connecting to your personal planets. Depending on where you are in life, like I said before, depending what age you are, depending what informs you, what defines you, your life, and so forth, how receptive and open you are, how ready you are to let go of the known, to let go of the conditions, to open yourself up to the unknown. These are all the possibilities. By the way, just in terms of right brain and long-term memory, if you go and see a hypnotherapist, a professional hypnotherapist, when hypnotherapy is taking place, what's actually happening is that the practitioner is accessing the Uranian memory. That's what they're doing. So that's those memories that rise up through the process of hypnotherapy all pertain to Uranus, which connect to every single life you have had. Okay, let's see where I'm at. Right, so let's okay, just a few more things this is pretty important to pay attention to. So as I said, Uranus has an 84-year cycle. Most of you would be aware of that. And the 4 critical passageways or portals or gateways or whatever word you wish to use relating to the cycle of Uranus on a personal level connect to the age of 21, 42, 63, and then 84, which is when Uranus has when you have a Uranus return. So at age 21, that's the first quarter square, as it's known. So from when you were born, Uranus was at a particular point in your chart. It's taken 21 years. So at the age of 21, you experience your first quarter square, Uranus to Uranus squaring itself. And that's a really important passageway for any human being, the age of 21. Now, it's very interesting because Saturn also correlates to that same age. So with Saturn, we have a 29-year cycle, right? So we need to have almost 3 cycles of Saturn in comparison to Uranus. Uranus is 84 years and Saturn is 29 years. So Saturn's weaving his cycle throughout the Uranus cycle. There's correlations there. So we're always sort of faced off, if you like, with the Saturn cycles and structure and reality versus Uranus's cycle and truth, awakening. So the age of 21 is the first point, which is known as crisis in action. The reason it's known as crisis in action, that comes from Dane Ruddier's work, which is relating to the moon phases. It's more specifically, crisis in action defines the energy that will manifest through a first quarter square from any planet to planet. In this case, we're talking about Uranus. So, at the age of 21, that's a very important passageway, because that is when most of us stand on a platform, on a level within our own selves, where we know we're not a kid anymore, and we know that we have to step up out into the real world and start taking responsibility for ourselves and so forth. Which is all Saturn's influence and energy. So, the Uranian component stands there side by side with Saturn. So we have the chance to open ourselves up to what Uranus is bringing at that age of 21. Most of us will not even respond to it, though. Most of us will respond to the Saturn energy, and that's always pertaining to the type of world we've grown up in up until that point. What have we learnt from the modelling of our parents, of society, of the culture and religion we're born into? In most cases, it's that, I am this age, my name is this, my parents are these people, this is the religion I believe, this is the government that governs this country, this is the schooling that I've had, and those experiences remain a concrete version of what you think life is and who you think you are. But Uranus is right there next to Saturn at the age of 21, knocking on the door, as it were, and trying to stimulate and open you up to other possibilities of other truths. But as I said, at the age of 21, most of us generally will not respond to the Uranian impulse that comes through. The next opportunity regarding Uranus is when we have transiting Uranus opposite natal Uranus, and that's at the age of 42. So you might be that age right now, or you might be heading there, or you might have already had this experience. But the the Uranus opposite Uranus at the age of 42 is probably one of the most important, or one of the most powerful transits from the point of view of you're still very young, but you are very experienced, right? Generally speaking. So you arrive at a juncture, at a passageway, where Uranus now is facing you again, literally now, because Uranus, let me just be clear actually, the first quarter square, which is at the age of 21, because it's a first quarter square, it's a lot of it can be felt internally. So there can be a lot of frustration, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Frustration, because you're not able to feel free. You know, you're not able to follow the path that you want to, even at the age of 21. Because there are people at age 21 who will just leave the traditional Saturnian world and go off onto, I don't know, some journey off grid, or go into a monastery, or go and follow some guru, or go and do something really radical, right? There are people that do that at the age of 21. I remember I traveled when I was 21. I went abroad and traveled all these different countries, and I was just doing my own thing with very little money, just whatever. Just I did whatever I needed to do to kind of just get by and so forth. But that was a really liberating experience at the age of 21 for me. So at the age of 21, you are either resisting, again, the Uranian impulse to break free from those Saturn structures that have been developed up to that point, or you are staying with the Saturn model, which is, okay, I'm 21, now I can go and get my license, I need to go to university, I need to conform to this, I need to conform to that. You conform to the consensus reality, basically, right? And that starts to inform who you should be growing into adulthood. So at the age of 42, what happens is when Uranus opposes Uranus, and as I said, this might be you right now, whatever you have created through the lenses of Saturn, Uranus comes knocking on your door and says, okay, here's an opportunity now for you at midlife, and this often is describes the midlife crisis that people go through. So if people have been subscribing to the Saturn reality and things haven't been quite working out, then this Uranus opposite Uranus is going to come crashing in like a bit of a tidal wave. It's going to throw your world around, and you're going to really be forced to recognize the truth of what's going on in your life. And you will have to make the necessary adjustments and changes, which often leads to people getting divorced, leaving a career they've been in for quite some time, you know, really questioning about, where do I belong in this world? Why am I here? What the hell do I actually believe? You know, where do I stand in all of this? These sorts of questions come flooding in. There's other things going on as well that add to this, with Neptune and Pluto, by the way, that happened just a little bit earlier of the age of 42. Sometimes it can be later, it just depends. But the question of, okay, actually, even if your world appears to be really successful through the lenses of Saturn, what normally happens is, which is why it's always referred to as the midlife crisis. So, you know, a person's got loads of money in the bank, they've got, you know, flashy car, they've got a family, they've got a career, and there's this underlying sense that, shit, I've got all this stuff, but I feel, part of me feels really empty. I feel like this stuff is not enough. It's not doing it for me. It's not making me feel like I have a real purpose. Is my purpose just to create a family and just to have a job and just to have some money in the bank? Now I've got all that. So what does my life mean now? So these are the questions that come through. So whether you are successful or unsuccessful through the lens of Saturn, the consensus reality, because through the consensus reality, you've made it when you've got a family, when you've got a flashy car, when you've got a job, career, and when you've got some cash in the bank. That means you're successful. It doesn't matter if you've sold your soul along the way or if you've got no connection to your soul. That doesn't matter in the Saturn consensus reality, because what equates to success are the things that I just named, generally speaking, right? But it is frequent the case that people will arrive at that point, that juncture, and because of the Uranus energy coming through, stimulating, it'll be the point where people start to ask, okay, so what am I really here to do? What does my life actually really mean? What purpose do I really have? And this is where doors can open. This is where people's lives can change for the better or for the worse. It just depends who you are and what level of awareness you've got. So that's the power of the next component of Uranus's cycle in terms of the 4 passageways. So 21, 42, the next one is at 63, and the last one is at 84. Now, the one at 63 is incredibly powerful because it's a step above everything I just described when you're going through at the age of 42. Because at the age of 63, you're kind of, you're getting on a bit in terms of life expectancy in today's world. When you're 63, you're not super old, but you're certainly not super young. So if you haven't worked out what all this means, it can be a really scary time when you're 63, because Saturn's imprint and influence speaks in your mind and says, oh, you're 63, you're getting old now and probably don't have too many years left to live. And it feeds all those fears, basically, right? Because you're living at the level of, this is it, this is my life, this is what I've created, and there's nothing more. So what else can I achieve? There's nothing left to achieve. I've achieved it all on that material external level, but you've done nothing in here. There's nothing in the internal world, as it were, because all the focus has been out there. So Uranus, again, will stimulate further investigation, opportunity for you to tap into the Uranian impulse and wake up. And then at the age of 84, that's a true awakening sort of period, if you like. But some people don't even live to that age. So that's another story altogether. But you kind of, I think, get the gist. It's really very interesting and very important to follow this cycle and to follow it with Saturn, because when you're following Saturn, you're looking at Saturn's movement every 7 years, and Uranus spends 7 years in one sign. Now, in 7 years, Saturn would have gone through 3 signs or thereabouts, right? But Uranus would have only gone through 1. But the ages in terms of 21 and 42 and 63 correlate to Saturn and Uranus. So whose call are you going to answer, the Saturn or the Uranus? It's up to you. The possibility is there. But I guess, with all of this, the main thing to understand is that, as I said at the very beginning, if you're living at the Saturn level, and that's where your world ends, then anything beyond that is frightening, or you have so much resistance to it. So the most benefit that one can get from the transpersonal planets is when one has the courage to be open and receptive to the possibilities of what those energies can bring into your life. Like I said, though, it doesn't mean that the experiences come wrapped in, a box of flowers. You have to be prepared to let go. You have to be prepared to let go of attachments and let go of what you've believed for the last 20 or 30 or 40 years. It's pretty hard for people to do. So now going back to Uranus in Taurus, Taurus is the one sign that hangs on to the death, right? It's the sign of attachment. So for the Taurians of the world at the moment, regardless of what age you are, really, Uranus is going to really confront you with the challenge of letting go of your attachments. That includes your attachment to the value system that you have, the possessions that you have, people that you hang on to, all sorts of things. Now, Taurus connects to survival, self-sufficiency, security, poverty, starvation, suppressed emotions. It's one of the most stubborn signs. It connects to self-esteem, personal value, personal worth, stagnation, withdrawal, beauty, values, inner resources, self-resource, preservation, procreation, fertility. They're just some keywords. The body, hoarding, people who are hoarders, strong Taurus archetype within them somewhere in their chart. So if Taurus is a sign of survival, then, Uranus in Taurus is going to bring up a lot of those issues in each of us individually and collectively. The world of finances is obviously going to go through an incredible change, disruption, unpredictable experience for 7 years, really. It's not going to be like that every day, but there's going to be this very powerful undertone that's going to dictate what's happening in the market, in finances, stocks, exchanges, all that sort of stuff. Property, the value of properties. We'd be looking at possible earthquakes. Taurus is the land. Uranus is electrifying energy, disruptive, chaotic. So unfortunately, I would not be surprised if we have some of the most severe earthquakes that we've seen in a very, very long time over the next 7 years. Those are more the sort of, I suppose, external changes, revolutionary changes that we will see. And I'm hoping that the Uranus in Taurus this time around, on a more positive level, can really somehow shift this imbalance of that we have on this earth plane at the moment, where some people own 5 properties and other people live on the street. There's this incredible imbalance that's still going on. It's been going on for ages, but still going on. So some of these issues, I think, will be certainly highlighted. When it comes to your own self, though, the Uranus in Taurus is very much forcing you to question what are the lifelong sort of beliefs and values that you've held on to, that you're really attached to, that you think define you and define your life. Those elements are going to be, you will either experience an incredible sense of disruption through your money, also in relationships as well, because Taurus is ruled by Venus, but relationships is more connected to the sign of Libra. Taurus is more about your own sense of worth and value. So the issues and the questions around your own self-worth and value will come up to a point of being revolutionized as well. You know, it's a real opportunity to wake up the senses in the body in a different way, because Taurus is the physical body. Literally, it's the physical body. It's the senses, right? The five senses. So the senses can be really woken up with this energy of Uranus coming through in Taurus. Instead of just kind of remaining at that basic Taurus level, like I need to eat, I need to sleep, I need to buy food, that they are the most basic, you know, primal survival, biological instincts, you could say, that we have, right? That's Taurus. But this Uranus coming through can really awaken those senses at a much more heightened level. It can awaken you to let go of the attachment and identity that perhaps you have to money, to the belief that if I don't have this much money, then I'm not successful, that I'm not worthy enough, or I can't make it out there, or I can't go out there and achieve what I want to achieve because I don't have enough money, you know. This is a conditioned perception and thought and belief. So Uranus is going to really revolutionize these systems of thinking. Okay, let's just see if there's anything else I want to touch on. Okay, I think that's mainly it. The main points that I really wanted you guys to take away from today is, you know, understanding Uranus in Taurus from the point of view of your own birth chart, right? So where is it transiting in your own chart? And if you are a Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, or Leo, then you'll be experiencing transiting Uranus very personally through a conjunction, square, or opposition. If you're not having that experience and you just have Uranus transiting a particular house, that house has an opportunity, that area of your life. Now an opportunity presents over the next 7 years for you to decondition that area of life, to liberate yourself, to free yourself up. I can't say it enough. I mean, it doesn't matter how much I say it. Free yourself, liberate yourself, wake up. They're just words. They're just words that I'm using that correlate to this archetype. But when you go through this experience, and I've been through it, and that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I know what it's like. I've just had transiting Uranus over my Sun and my Mercury, okay, the last couple of years, because I'm Sun in Aries, Mercury in Aries. And it's been a bitter, sweet awakening for me personally. Now, the Sun and Mercury are in my 4th house, so it obviously connects to my family, right? And, you know, it's without going into it, and I have mentioned this before, some of you who have watched my earlier videos might have heard me say this, and I don't want to go into it because it's still very, 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 very painful for me. But the Uranus aspecting my Sun, and I've had other things going on in my chart that also connect to this experience, was my father leaving this world, right? The Sun is my dad in my chart, and he's in the 4th house. So I have a soul connection with my father. So it shook my world upside down. I can't even begin to tell you what it did to my world, or to my life, or to my heart, or to my soul. Point being, though, that was the experience of I had to go through that. I had to let go. And I'm still letting go. It hasn't really completed for me. There were other things going on in my chart that speak to this experience that I've had just recently. But the other component to the Uranus, as I said, it was bittersweet, is that it's sort of very hard to encapsulate in a few words, but there's been a lot of things going on a soul level for me, awakening a lot of soul memories. The fourth house represents soul life, inner life, right? And Uranus being on my Mercury has, it's not fast tracked, it's woken up my intuition in ways that I myself find myself standing there thinking to myself, I can't believe how powerful my intuition is and has been since Uranus has been on my Sun and Mercury. So I've always been an intuitive person anyway, since I was born. And Uranus transiting my Sun and my Mercury has just magnified that intuition for me in ways that words cannot really define. The other thing it's done is that it's because Uranus rules long-term memory and futuristic memory as well. I've tapped into both the past and the future for my own life, for myself, for what I'm here to do, what I'm doing. And it's all connected to the astrology, some other things as well. And also the Uranus, transiting Uranus conjunct my Sun and Mercury, has been me creating this YouTube channel, for instance, because prior to this, I was just doing readings privately. I had another career, which was to do with helping people again, but not using astrology because I was working in the Saturn world. I was a mental health worker or a counselor, therapist, whatever you want to call it. And I did that for quite a few years. And I was, whilst I loved doing my work, I hated the Saturn model. It just didn't fit me one single bit. It really pissed me off. I couldn't conform to the Saturn model. And I don't think I ever will. No, I won't actually. So the transition that I made was to decide to do astrology full time and just put all my heart and soul and energy into this work and just let it be whatever it's going to be and just trust. And that's what I've done and that's what I'm doing. And this is probably the happiest I've ever felt in my life because I'm finally giving all my time and energy into the very thing that I was born to do, and I know that. So that's why it's been bittersweet, because I had to release my father to allow myself to get onto this path and give 100% of myself to this. So, I mean, it's so extreme, it's so full on, it's so powerful. I've just told you a few words that describes what I've been through, but the journey itself is mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. So that's some of what Uranus has been doing for me. So have a look at where transiting Uranus is in your own chart. And also, actually, now that Uranus has gone into Taurus, it's going to be a really interesting experience for me because I've got Saturn in Taurus. And I'm actually looking forward to Saturn in Uranus. It's really going to be quite a freeing, liberating journey to smash through what Saturn has tried to kind of limit in my life. Not that Saturn really, it's not like Saturn is out there and he's saying, oh, I'm going to punish you, I'm going to limit you. It's, these energies are in our chart because we chose to be born into them. We have chosen to wake up through them in some kind of way, to work through them, to heal through them, to evolve through them. So the sooner we can actually realize that and work with that energy rather than project it, the sooner we're going to evolve and liberate. And Pluto is evolution and Uranus is liberation. And Neptune is spiritualization. So if you are working or living and breathing in life through those energies, then these are the sorts of things that you are working with and working through. And it's not just this lifetime, it's many lifetimes, previous and ones to come. But the more you can wake up, wake up, wake up, the more you will be liberated. Because the only reason that people feel constrained in this consensus reality is because of Saturn. So if you stay within that model, you will never be free. Never. If you can break beyond that model and work with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you start to experience a sense within your own self of multi-dimensional layers within you. Remember, Saturn rules boundaries, right? So Saturn rules the bones, the skeletal structure. It also rules the skin. The skin is the biggest organ in the body, and it rules the skin, right? That's what Saturn rules. So, which is why we end up looking all old and wrinkly as we biologically age, because it's Saturn. So if you look at your hands and you look at where your hands finish, that's Saturn, right? That's the end of your skin, as it were, or your feet. And if you believe that this is who you are and that's where it ends, well, then you are living in the world of Saturn. But if you understand life from a spiritual experience, you understand that you have spiritual bodies. You have an astral body, you have an etheric body, which is the chakras. The astral body is the emotional body. You have a higher mind body, Uranus, right brain. You have other spiritual bodies. So, and they are simply not visible with the naked eye, the eyes of Saturn lenses. But they are experienced, felt, and sensed when you are able to be receptive and step into those spaces where you can connect with these other bodies that are you, because you're not just the physical. So, this is what Saturn can, Uranus can wake you up to. If we don't wake up to Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, we are living in the chains of Saturn, and life is defined by this consensus reality, and that is an extremely limiting, suffocating world to live in. And unfortunately, a lot of people live from that level, and that's just the way it is. But if anything, I hope this video inspires you or encourages you to understand the power of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and what they can do to open you up to so much more, because there is so much more. It's not just 3D Saturn world. So again, Uranus in Taurus is going to shatter, disrupt, and wake up all areas of life pertaining to the Taurus world, which is what we think our foundations are, what we think our core values are, the relationship we have with money, the relationship we have to attachment, whether it's people, money, sex, drugs, whatever. Any form of attachment, which can lead to addiction, that connects to Taurus, Scorpio, actually, because Scorpio is addiction and Taurus is attachment. So you can see that polarity, they work together, just like every polarity does. So get ready to have a really, what can I call it? It's going to be a bit of a rocket ride for the next 7 years, because Taurus is about stability and Uranus is about instability. So if we try to hang on to the stability that we think we need to hang on to, then we're looking for a pretty rough ride. We're looking at a pretty rough ride. But if we can open ourselves up and trust the unknown, which is Uranus, the unknown, we're likely to transform, evolve. All right, guys, that's my spin on Uranus entering Taurus over the next 7 years. Now, I've brought in a lot of other components I felt that I needed to, because I don't do popular astrology, right? I like to explore things from a deeper and more thorough level. We need to understand Uranus from the point of view in our own chart, where it starts and as it travels around, what it's waking up and shaking up, and what the Uranian archetype essentially represents, and the absolute distinction between Saturn and Uranus, because we live in a world of Saturn. And by the way, Chiron, which sits in between Saturn and Uranus, Chiron is that rainbow bridge. Chiron has the gates, the access to taking us into those other transpersonal energies, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So that's why Chiron is such a key player as well. Okay, I will be back with a Chiron part 2, actually. I said I was going to do that, and I haven't done that yet. It's been a really crazy past week. The last video I did was a week ago, and in this last week I've had so much going on. I've had some wonderful experiences. Though I participate in some chanting events, and those chanting events, how can I put it? They are so powerful. They really move and shift things within you as you chant, like chanting certain mantras. When you've got a room full of people all focused on the same one mantra and chanting, the exchange on a vibrational frequency level is just out of this world. It's so freaking powerful. But it also stirs things up. So it can cause sleepless nights. It can cause overstimulation. It can cause mood just kind of going all over the shop. It's been a little bit like that for me. Like when I actually participated in the 2 events that I went to, my vibration was so high. I was really blissed out. But then I had to kind of come back down and deal with whatever was opened up during that process. So it's been a really weird last 7 days, and with everything that's been going on with Mercury in Pisces retrograde and all this other stuff that's been going on. So I wonder how you guys have been feeling. Let me know. I'd be interested to hear your comments and your experiences. And leave any questions and comments below this video. I always do my best to respond to everybody. If you're interested in having a personal reading, you know what to do. I have my details in the description box below. You can just email me directly, or if you have any questions about any type of readings, I do many different types. Love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Thanks so much. Love and blessings, and take care. Bye.